I get the feeling that we're being wore down by all the things that are happening all around us in this world. I mean, you had this recent dump of information that the things that are found within it are so disturbing that I know for a lot of people who weren't aware of these type of things that were going on, their whole worldview has been shattered. And then as if that wasn't enough to wrestle with for a while, immediately you get bombarded with all this other stuff. Now there's wars in Mexico, and there's a war being discussed, that's very likely in Iran, and then there's still the ongoing war in Ukraine, and it's just all of these wars. And the one that's most important is the one that's for your mind, because that's definitely a war that has been waging since you were born. And so we're just bombarded with negativity from every direction constantly. And we're at a time where everybody has a device, and all of that just keeps stacking all this negative weight, and it just begins to wear you down. And you have to be questioning, is that part of the reason we're seeing all this? Is that what's going on here? Is a big part of it to do just that, to wear us down? Well, whether that's the intent of this physical reality, I can pretty much tell you for sure that it is the intent of the spiritual one. It wants to drag you down. And it wants to rob you of your power and your positive energy. And so what can we do about this? Because we're constantly bombarded with this stuff all the time. And for many of us, it's difficult to just disconnect from everything. And, if you're a parent today, then you need to make sure that you are staying informed and that you understand these things that are going on. After all, you owe it to your children to make sure you are well aware of what's happening in the world that they're about to either go out into or grow up in. And so we can't just disconnect from it completely. I do encourage people to disconnect from it frequently, but we can't disconnect from it completely. I mean, you could, but I don't know. I just don't feel like that's the answer. But we do need to give ourselves a break from it mentally, because this will wear you down. And so how do we do that? How do we focus on positive things when there's so much negativity all around us? Well, I think that there's a lot of different things that we could talk about here. But one of the things that I'm trying to do, because I am already by nature a very pessimistic person as it is, and I've been really working hard to try and change that lately. And it's one of my main goals this year, is to try and break free of that negative mindset and to try and cultivate a more positive one. And I do believe that if we respond in more of a positive nature to life and the things that are happening in it, then that can dictate a more positive, optimistic future out in front of us. I do believe that. And so I'm working on it very hard, but it is hard. It's very difficult. And so a big step is turning it off every once in a while, because you need a break from it. But another big part of that is making sure that we don't dive too deep. Because what can happen is, as we go down these rabbit holes trying to seek out truth in these different matters, if someone's not holding on to your feet, there's a good chance you may get lost down there for a very long time. And that's not good for your mindset and your mentality. And we have an obvious problem with mental health today. I did a video on the statistics of those. It is mind blowing how many people are affected by mental health issues today. And I'm telling you, this environment that we are in does not help matters at all. And so we need to be able to guard ourselves from a lot of that. And if we partake in too much of that evil, it just wears you down. I've been there. I've done that. I did it for years, trying to understand this world and the things that were happening in it and all the lies that are clearly being pushed on us on the daily, because there's agendas and narratives and all of it constantly. And so we need to be able to nurture our minds and pull away from that stuff, and also to focus on the things that are pure and good and true, and try to remain grounded, as we progress in this future where it does not look very bright right now. Hopefully that will change, but I'm not so sure, to be honest. And so we need to find ways to try and stay grounded and to try and maintain a positive mindset on these things, even when you're being faced with these realities of what this world actually looks like that we find ourselves in. And it's a disgusting one, and it's one that's full of evil. Clearly, hopefully we can see it for what it is now. So how do we respond to this, and how do we coexist in a world that everything that's going on seems to be contrary to your spirit and to all the things that are good and pure and natural and organic and authentic? Because all of that stuff is contrary to it. We live in a world that everything is synthetic today and everything's processed today. And so we need to get away from all of that stuff as much as we can. We need to turn back to nature, and we need to rely on those natural things and break away from that system of synthetic everything. And that's a big part of it. And that will help us physically, mentally, emotionally. And so we really need to focus on the things that we're eating and the way that we treat our body and the things that we're doing on a daily basis. And so even though there's all of that going on out there, we still have to have that quiet place that we can go to and focus on what we're all about and what we're trying to do here in this life. As difficult as that is, it is possible. But we have to know what it is to focus on, right? And so if all of that is negative out there, we need to create a barrier around us where we don't allow it to penetrate in too much, and that we speak positive things into the world around us, and that we try to make sure our thoughts are positive thoughts, so that it helps to keep out those negative voices that always seem to be able to whisper in your ear, And so we need to recognize those voices for what they are, and we need to push them out, and we need to penetrate our minds with positivity. And one thing that I've done this year is create a vision board. That may sound crazy to some, like, oh, that I'm not all about, for me, it's not a vision board. For me, it is a visual to-do list. And I'm going to show it to you here in a minute. And I would encourage you to do this. Brainstorm your mind to find the positive things that you want to focus on this year, because the more that you can focus on these things, the less attention that you give those things. And then they don't have the same hold, over you. as what they normally would, because you are locked in and focused to something greater and beyond you. And when you're striving for that in your life, I do believe that ultimately we will come into those things. But if we're going down all these rabbit holes of information constantly, trying to figure out what it is that actually happened here, I'm telling you, I think a lot of those rabbit holes are dead ends. And so you might as well just use your imagination, because it's probably not real far off from what the truth is. And so I want to show you my visual punch list here. And like I said, I would encourage you to do the same. I simply sat down with a computer. I went through my mind and I just looked for images that were related to the things that I wanted to focus on this year. And as those images came up and they seemed appropriate and in line with my goals, I put them in a folder. And then I had all those things printed out. I cut them out and I pasted them onto a poster board and I hung them front and center at my dresser in my bedroom, so that every day I can walk up to that thing first thing in the morning to refocus my direction on the things that are important and what it is that I'm trying to do here. And I think that if we can start our day in that way and we can remain focused on our goals and positive things, then all this negativity can't impact us in the way that they hope that it would. And so we have to be strong here. We have to be strong here mentally. We need to be strong here physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And for me, this is what helps me on that, or with that objective. And so I really think it would help you as well. I have a couple hours wrapped up in it, and now I can walk up to it every day to start my day and see what it is that I am focused on, and to keep that front and center. And then, yeah, I may listening to something, throughout the day with, what's going on in the world, and I just file that as information, but it does not consume me, because I've allowed that to happen in the past, and I'm telling you, it is not good. It's not good for our mental health. We can only take bite-sized amounts of that information, enough that we can digest it and not be consumed by it. And that's the key. So I'm not trying to tell you to not pay attention to it, because that's just the opposite of what I think we should be doing. But just don't let it control your life, because it will ultimately bring you down. I promise you that, because I've been there. So hopefully this has helped you. Like I said at the end here in closing, I'll show you my boards to give you some ideas, hopefully for your own. And good luck to you all on your journey. I'm Brad Casper. This is Casper's Corner. We're out. Some people call these things vision boards. I call it a visual to-do list. I would encourage everybody to do this, because what it involves is brainstorming your mind to set goals out in front of you that you plan to achieve. And by making them visual like this, that you can walk up to every day and look at them, to help you stay grounded and centered and focused on what these goals are. I feel this is a great way to go about doing it. And honestly, it took me a couple hours between just creating a folder and Googling images that were coming to mind and throwing them in that folder, then printing them out, cutting the paper, gluing it onto the poster board. I mean, we're talking a couple hours here. And now this is my place I come to every morning and look at these things to help me remain focused on the things that are important to me. And we need this. We need this type of positive thing more now than ever, because we're just bombarded with negativity from every direction. And so having something like this that you can walk up to begin your day each day, it can really help you remain focused and to make sure that you're staying on path to achieve all that you plan to achieve.